or just normal conversation.
Sometimes people just say, "Can you hold my hand?" And you make that difference. And you're helping them get through a bad day.
Good afternoon and welcome to the February 6, 2023 meeting of the Orlando City Council. We're going to open today's meeting with the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance led today by Commissioner Jim Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. And for those so inclined, would you please join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for guidance, wisdom, courage, and kindness as we address the affairs of this community. Help us engage in meaningful discussions that lead to decisions that advance this city, its residents, in your will. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's officially call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll and determine the quorum, please?
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Here.
Commissioner Stewart?
Here.
Commissioner Sheehan? Here. Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Burns?
Present.
Mayor Dyer?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum with all members present.
Thank you. Agenda review and City Council meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2023.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Sheehan. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, and so the motion carries. Okay, we do have one presentation. So each February, our community, like the rest of the country, celebrates Black History Month, recognizing the contributions that Black Americans have made to our nation and to our state and, of course, to our city. And I want to thank city staff on our Black History Month Planning Committee who have helped to coordinate a variety of events, a couple of which have already occurred with the opening of the art gallery on the terrace level, or the terrace gallery, and then we had the lighting of the luminaries on Friday, so we're off to a good start. But I would like Mershawn to come up and give us an overview of our Black History Month activities. Mershawn?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you all for celebrating and valuing Black History Month and the City Beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone. Celebrating and learning about Black History Month, a nearly century-old celebration of 400 years of African American culture, matters now more than ever. Around the nation, we are witnessing the attempts to erase African American history from textbooks and remove it from our schools, even in our great state of Florida. In many schools and communities, Black history only encompasses the freedom of enslaved Africans, the Civil Rights Movement, and the elections of Vice President Kamala Harris and President Barack Obama. While definitely historic, these events are but a fraction of Black history in America. At the Black History Month art exhibit, Commissioner Hill referenced Negro History Week, and I'd like to expand on that. The celebration of Black history can be traced back to 1926, when Carter G. Woodson, a Black American scholar, founded Negro History Week. He wanted to expose school children to African American history. But he also wanted to encourage social equity for African Americans by showing people how much of the country's growth stemmed from Black contributions, and not only through slavery, but also through countless creative, academic, professional, athletic, political, and cultural contributions. Woodson aimed to increase Black representation because representation matters. This commemorative month remains necessary because much of African American history has been left out of our history, of American history, and is falsely being labeled as critical race theory. The significant contributions of African Americans in building America are facts. Racism and oppression in America are facts. African American history is fact. African American history is American history. American history is a part of world history. Therefore, Black history is world history. Good, bad, and indifferent, all history matters. So this month, we celebrate Black history. With that in mind, the City of Orlando staff members who have volunteered their time to be a part of our Black History Month committee have organized a series of events for residents this month, highlighting this year's national theme of Black resistance. The events are also designed to educate, entertain, and empower. So for the fun stuff, it includes a celebration, our signature event. It's at the Camping World Stadium West Lounge this Wednesday, 6 p.m. It will feature Orlando poet Sean Laureate, a keynote address from Jasmine Burney of Equal Ground, and will be hosted by Spectrum News 13's Curtis McLeod. It is free to the public. We have food, live entertainment, but you must register online. You could do that at orlando.gov/BHM. We also have Thursday, February the 23rd, 9:15 and 10:30 a.m. There's a What's Up Downtown Paramore Historic Bus Trolley tour. It will go through Paramore. It will show you the creators of various things and achievements in the Paramore community. And then Saturday, the City of Orlando Office of Human Relations will host a fair housing fair. It will be at the Primrose Center from noon to 4 p.m. You must also register online for that, as well as the trolley. Again, at orlando.gov/BHM for those events. And I would like to thank the members of the steering committee for their passion and dedication to creating a meaningful observance of this month for our community. Mayor Dyer, can you please read our Black History Month proclamation? And then the members of the steering committee will join you and all commissioners for a photo. Thank you all for coming.
Be very happy to. Proclamation, City of Orlando. Whereas Black history is an integral part of American history, Black Americans have played an undeniable role in building, strengthening, and shaping the United States. And whereas the Black History Month is an annual celebration that recognizes the central role of Black Americans in our nation's history. And whereas Black History Month dates back to 1915, half century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States and the efforts of historian, author, and journalist Carter G. Woodson. And whereas Black Americans have remained devoted to the proposition that we are all created equal, even when their own rights have been denied. And whereas this year's National Black History Month theme is Black Resistance, which recognizes how Black Americans have fought oppression and inspired others to participate in civil rights and equity movements. And whereas celebrating Black History Month, the City of Orlando recognizes the historic contributions of Black Americans while also acknowledging that the struggle for equality continues. And whereas as a community, we recommit to continue the work to ensure all residents are treated equally, are equally protected, and have equitable access to opportunities that help them thrive, including our collective efforts to make Orlando an inclusive, welcoming city for all. Now, therefore, we, Buddy Dyer, Mayor of the City of Orlando, and the Orlando City Council hereby do proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in the City of Orlando.
Do one with just the group and then have the kids come. We want to honor you kids too. Come on, y'all. I'm sorry, the youth. They are, no, youth.
And as they're leaving, that was the students from Meridian Christian Academy and Carter Tabernacle Church. Thanks for being here. Okay, so that brings us to the mayor's update. And I want to start on a somewhat serious tone. Many in our community, myself included, were saddened and really furious to learn about the killing of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, and there's been certainly a national uproar about that, and there are no words I can say to ease the pain, anger, and trauma that many are experiencing here in Orlando. Tyree should be alive today, and I think we all agree that the officers responsible for his death ought to be held accountable. And his murder is another call for police reform. And here in Orlando, we remain proactively focused on taking action to ensure that fair and equitable treatment of every person that OPD encounters occurs. And I'm grateful every day for the courage and the commitment of our OPD officers, and I thank them for the efforts that they play in great policing here in Orlando. In 2020, we invited the Bowman Group in to review our policies and practices, and they recommended a number of reforms and actions that we could take, and we have implemented many of those recommendations, and we continue to work on doing that through our Office of Constitutional Policing, which was created in response to that review. And we're also growing our community response teams so that in a lot of cases, trained behavioral health professionals can respond to 911 calls instead of officers. So we will continue our work toward transparency and raising our professional standards. On a brighter note, I want to take a moment to recognize one of our community leaders and city employees, Shannon Fitzgerald. Is Shannon here today? She is not, so I will welcome her anyway, or congratulate her anyways. She is the director of our world-class Manila Museum of Art, but she was recognized as one of 5 Orange Appeals Women of the Year at the Dr. Phillips Center last week, so congratulations on all the great work that she is doing. And I have one item on the agenda that I want to mention, and that's D1, where we are once again partnering with CareerSource to provide paid summer internships for our city's youth. And that program was so successful last year. We employed 660 youth, with over 200 of them being offered continuous employment at the end of their internships. So this year we're going to be focused on the areas of hospitality, green area, energy, and technology. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is a number of items that are acted upon through a single vote of council. We give each of our commissioners the opportunity to comment on the consent agenda. We rotate the order that we do that. And first up today is Commissioner Jim Gray.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. I'll be brief. Just one announcement for the neighborhood. Most of the activities are on our website, but coming up on March 3rd, Saturday, March 4th, we're having our fall festival out at Vista Lakes. It was a fall festival, but Hurricane Ian got in the way, so it's now become a spring festival. But it's Saturday the 4th from 11 to 2:30 at Amherst Park in Vista Lakes. Everyone's welcome to attend. We have everything for the kids, OPD, OFD will be there showing their wares, a petting zoo, DJs, schools performing, hamburgers, hot dogs, and it's all free. So it's something to kind of energize the community. We've done it last year and great success, so look forward to that. Again, this Saturday, March 4th. Before I get to agenda, there was one other item, kind of a sad note. I would like to recognize the passing of Mr. Harvey Massey. Harvey was certainly involved in our community and everything from Florida Citrus Sports to Orlando Economic Partnership, a great philanthropist. We lost him, but would like to recognize Harvey for his contributions to the city. On the agenda, I'd like to talk about item C14, which is a 3-year funding agreement for Orlando Economic Partnership. We have some representatives here from the partnership, and I'd just like to say thank you for all you do for not only Orlando, but Central Florida in attracting companies and higher paying jobs and wages. So thank you for what you do, and I totally support this contribution, help your efforts, so we appreciate you very much. And with that, Mayor, I think that's all I've got to offer.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to express my condolences to the family of Mr. Harvey Massey. He was a great friend of the community. Also, we lost the Deborah Alstad. So my condolences to the family of Deborah Alstad. Deborah Alstad was the president of the Englewood Association, Neighborhood Association for years, and we lost her to cancer. I'm going to keep my comments today. The only thing I want to remind people is that we're about to start the, in about a month, legislative session up in Tallahassee and gearing up also for Washington. People, please pay attention to what these legislators are doing up there, because they tend to pass legislations that affect us locally, and if we don't call them and tell them to stop or to do something else, they will continue doing it. And by the time we find out, it's a little too late. So let's please make sure that we know what's going on, and if you need some help with that also, you're welcome to call us or call me at my office, and I'll be more than happy to help you with that. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me share a couple of things, and I appreciate Commissioner Gray and Commissioner Ortiz giving me their time. So we'll take the next 45 minutes to talk a little bit about, I won't do that to y'all. I do want to share a couple of things. Mayor, thank you for your comments about Tyree Nichols. It is, I think our city began to look at those issues at the right time, and we've been aggressive about that, and we've had the good staff to accomplish that task, and I appreciate the leadership of Chief Smith. But you're exactly right. It is wrong on every aspect, especially in terms of people who have taken some type of public trust. And so thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. A couple things I want to share. We had an opportunity to be in the Dragon Parade for Lunar New Year yesterday. It was great. Mayor and Commissioner Sheehan were there. We had a great time and loved doing that. That's a really neat way to do that. It's a good partnership between District 3 and District 4 to that on. I want to say thank you to Lake Silver Elementary. They're putting together a Super Kids celebration coming up next week. Excited about that. And also want to say thank you to a new business, kind of a neat new business called Green Beat over in Baldwin Park. Some upcoming events real quick, I'll just share with you. The CPNA is meeting tonight. Orlando Science Center is doing Earth Matters. Started the 22nd of January, is now going through April. Going to have an opportunity to learn about impact of climate change and what is important. You've seen on all of our Facebook posts about the need for lifeguards. If you know kids that need lifeguards, lifeguard certification, we'll be glad to help them with that. I know that there was I think it was New York City had a lot of publicity for wanting to hire lifeguards and said you haven't got to learn how to swim, or you haven't got to swim to be a lifeguard. So the good news is that we do a lifeguard certification class first before we hire them. So please come out. This Friday night, we're having our senior Valentine dinner over at Rosemont Neighborhood Center. It's for all of our senior programs. We're hosting it in Rosemont. I'm really excited about it. So it's going to be a lot of fun time for that. Ivanhoe Village has got a cleanup, and of course the Wetlands Festival is coming up really need, the Wetlands Festival is one of those things that's really kind of fun. We haven't done a very good job, I guess, as I'd say, or hasn't been back to where it needs to be since before COVID. This is the first time we have a chance to do that. And we'll get a chance to show off some new amenities out there, Mayor, the new walkway, the new facility out there. So please get a chance to come out and do that. On the agenda today, let me mention a couple of things. Yes, I'm fully in support of the Orlando Economic Partnership funding. I think it's a good investment in our community. Thank you very much for what you do. Also, I want to mention item I-1 from Public Works. Thank you, Corey, for your leadership with Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We're doing a septic tank conversion up in one portion of Rosemont. It's about 100 homes. Hope to convert them off septic tanks over to sewer, which is not only better for them, better for the city, it's better for everybody all involved. And so looking forward to working with Public Works and get that information out and having that happen. So that's on the agenda today. I'm honored to support that. So thank you very much. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheehan.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. And Mr. Massey was a tremendous loss to this community. And what a lot of people don't realize is he was one of the first business leaders that says, build them right, build them all, build them now with the performing arts. So, at a time when it was controversial to do so, to support arts for our community, Mr. Massey was a business leader that actually came forward and spoke very firmly and proudly about how important that was. And that is a tremendous loss to our community. We are celebrating Black History Month. It's important now more than ever to educate our community on the injustices Black Americans face every single day. And if you are a white person who doesn't understand what the big deal is, I suggest that you go to PBS, watch Dr. Henry Louis Gates' series on Reconstruction. It is eye-opening. It really talks about the injustices that have happened to Black Americans, and I would encourage anyone who doesn't understand to please watch Dr. Henry Louis Gates' Reconstruction. It's an amazing series. I know Commissioner Hill showed it to some of her kids, and I think it's so important for us to understand history, and if you're afraid of it, you need to, more than ever, you need to also understand. On the agenda today as well, item A1, the Mayor's Neighborhood Matching Grant for Orlando International Film Festival. Again, doing great things to support the arts. And I do have a statement that I'm going to read because I'm a little angry, and it's better sometimes for me to read stuff when I'm really, really mad. So if you indulge me for just a minute, but this is regarding the Plaza Live. One of the great pleasures of living in Orlando is the diversity and quality entertainment that we enjoy at numerous performance venues. Imagine my horror when our governor threatened one of my favorite performance venues, the Plaza Live, with losing their liquor license over hosting a drag-themed show that they have been performing in Orlando for over 8 years. I was present at the show. There were no minors 6 years of age in the venue. The minors were actually accompanying the protesters who were screaming obscenities at the ticketed patrons. So much for concern over corrupting the morals of children. There were some teenagers accompanied by their parents who came to the show. I thought parents would be respected to make these decisions on behalf of their children. The show was not lewd, nor was it lascivious. It was a campy show with some risque content that anyone can see on any television show any night of the week. If you don't like drag shows, don't attend one. That used to be a freedom afforded Floridians, that we used to be able to make decisions for ourselves. But now we are attacked by people who consider it a violation of their freedom to wear a mask to stop the spread of disease, but they have no problem protesting a woman's right to choose control over her own body, or another religion's right to their own expression of faith, or how to learn about injustice in an African American Studies course, or to simply enjoy a form of gender-bending entertainment that brings people joy. We deserve our right to be free as well, but we have to hear about the sacred honor of the Second Amendment while our children are slaughtered by gun violence. But we cannot enjoy our First Amendment right to be entertained or educated or to worship. Anti-Jewish slogans are being projected on our downtown buildings. Teachers are afraid of losing their jobs for teaching about slavery or helping LGBTQ kids to find affirming literature. And now I can't even get a couple of laughs while watching a campy reindeer dance on stage. Yes, I am a woke woman. I stand for wisdom, opportunity, kindness, and empathy. I'm a product of a public education system that afforded me the opportunity to read great books, some of which may be uncomfortable enough to learn and care about others whose skin color may differ than mine. I'm a woman who never takes for granted the fact that my mother's generation could not get credit without a male cosigner. I have seen how my Jewish coworkers were passed over for promotions. I have seen injustice, and I know that we as an Orlando community must stand against it in all its forms. I will fight for my right to be entertained as I choose, to learn as I choose to worship or not to choose, to choose to worship or not to choose. It is really an important part of the freedom that we used to value as Floridians. I am really proud to live in an Orlando community that upholds these values of inclusion and diversity. Yes, I am woke. I am proud, and we are going to fight to protect our freedoms. Buy a ticket and support Plaza Live. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well said. Commissioner Hill.
Whoa, that was so powerful, Commissioner Sheehan. Need to be said.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know you're still in a daze too after that eloquent speech. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Well, my update for the last few weeks since we've been out of council, you know, as mayor, commissioner, and many on the council before me stated that, you know, I'm very proud to be part of this City of Orlando fabric when we talk about equity and inclusion and just advocating on the behalf of the downtrodden or just those that have been rendered voiceless. So today, as Mayor stated, with the funding that's going to be given to our recreation department for over 700 youth with jobs. You know, I remember probably in 2014, at that time, she was Sergeant Deborah Clayton, and she was talking about wanting to put more kids to work during the summer. And just to see how this has transformed into 700 jobs that summer in 2014, where it was a Stop the Violence Crime Prevention youth mechanism, and we had more kids than jobs. Probably had almost 700 kids at that time show up and could only employ close to 150 of them, and that was with some of our city recreation jobs. But to see how the community has came together and really created this space to give soft skills and opportunities and access to our youth is just quite commendable. So thank Career Source and all the other business owners in the hospitality fields and economic development fields and tech industries and sustainability industries to create this access for these children and give them a path to a great future and help with some of the things their parents, many of their parents possibly can't provide, is to be commended. I went out with the Salvation Army and Captain Chapman and his team and some other community leaders where they provided something that's called shelter suits. Shelter suits is a sleeping bag with a hood over it, and it's insulated and thermally insulated, where against all weather inclement times here in the city or wherever. They were shipped in from Africa. A very philanthropic donor paid for these bags, and they went out and gave them to them along with some young ladies that provided hood blankets where they put on the blankets. And so these are some of the, I think, things that we want to see in the future. Of course, we'll be talking about some rapid rehousing that's on the agenda today on how we're going to possibly, not even possibly, where we have to really circumvent many of the tents that we see popping up throughout the city, but primarily that has encompassed the Paramore community. So I've asked Mayor, which I'm in support of these initiatives, because doing nothing isn't the answer. But I think there needs to be a little bit more dialogue, Mayor, on some of the strategic planning that's wrapped around it. So I would like to hear more about that. So I've asked council to pull that from the consent agenda, and we'll be addressing the F1 onto a new business. So thank you, Eric, for joining us to ask a few of the questions. You guys have been meeting for a year and a half. And also, I'll be supporting F2, which is the agreement between the city of Orlando with Jump Ministries for emergency solutions and outreach there in the John Young Colonial Drive corridor, where we also have a major, and Mike, congratulations on the $5,000 from OPD with iDignity. But as I was saying, with that John Young Colonial Drive corridor, that's another major corridor that has now been saturated with folks sleeping on benches, going into the neighborhoods, and we have to give them some type of wraparound services, but create this safe ecosystem there in District 5, from Paramore to Harrison Estate through Rock Lake, because right now, families and children are afraid to go outside. Businesses are being negatively impacted by the surgence of these tents. Crime is being taken place, and I know our chief is working, him and his team are really working diligently on coming up with a solution around that. Just had stabbing, murder, mayhem in these tent cities. For me, this is a major issue, because it does sit in a community where the city and Mayor Dyer's leadership, we are investing millions in that community when it comes to affordable housing, when it comes to creating that ecosystem of cradle to career, when it comes to health and wellness, and especially small business development. And this particular issue has really imploded in the last year and a half or two, and now it's impacting the very citizens that we asked to come there and to be good stewards and stakeholders. So, you know, and we continue to put funding in place, but the needle is going backwards. And so we do really need a true commitment to where these dollars are going and to save Paramore, in essence, because right now, the homeowners and the business owners feel like they're under siege. And we do have great partners, and I know this is a daunting lift nationwide, not just in the city of Orlando. But right now, I'm concerned about Paramore, District 5, and how these vulnerable citizens that already live there, that have so many different challenges and obstacles, has another one. So hopefully this new surge, we can get there. Just think we need to tweak it a little bit. But I appreciate everyone that has contributed, that is doing the best they can. But the citizens and residents right now saying our best isn't enough. So that's why I've asked to put it on the agenda, just to tighten up a few things. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, and Commissioner Burns.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to just thank Marshawn Green and the Office of Multicultural Affairs for the excellent job in coordinating the Black History Month art exhibit. Open reception. I got a chance to meet some very talented artists and experience their pieces. So I encourage everyone to stop by and check those out. I think you will be impressed. Also, we will continue our satellite office hours. Next office hours will be at the Smith Center February 22nd. Also on Saturday, January 28th, I attended the Beyond 4 Foundation Keep It Play Her, a sports camp and clinic, a free skills development session for girls ages 8 to 18 over at the Grand Avenue Neighborhood Center. Also, I will be hosting our District 6 Town Hall. The State of District 6 will be happening on February the 15th at the Grand Avenue Neighborhood Center at 6 o'clock. Also, I just want to say thank you to Chief Smith and the great policing that happens within the OPD. A couple of weeks ago, my residence was burglarized, and the officers responded. And when I was talking to one officer, Officer Holly, I was giving him kind of recanting what happened, and he looked at me, he said, and he told me exactly where he thought the perpetrator lived, because my community had experienced several break-ins. They were very concerned, scared, individuals walking up to their front doors. My home was burglarized about 7:30 in the evening. I'm usually home at that time. And if I would have come home about 15 minutes early, I would have walked in on it. But I just want to say thank you for the great policing, because only a few days later, the perpetrator was caught, and I understand is being prosecuted. So I just want to say thank you, Chief, and especially to Officer Holly, DeAndre Holly, who I guess had his ear to the ground. I told him what happened, and he knew exactly where the perpetrator lived. So again, thank you for all the hard work. On the agenda today, I too would like to express my support for the Orlando Economic Partnership 3-year funding. Also, D1, the Summer Youth Employment Program. As Commissioner Hill mentioned, I think this is a great program, give our youth the opportunity to make some money and keep them engaged in activities that will continue to move their lives forward. Also with the F1, the ESG funding to Jump Ministries, because again, all those resources dedicated to committed organizations to address homelessness in our community is very much needed. In honor of Black History Month, I would like to speak briefly about Dr. J. Mark Cox. Dr. J. Mark Cox worked as one of the first African-American surgeons in Orlando. He graduated from the College of Medical Evangelists in Loma Linda, California. Florida Hospital and the Seventh-day Adventist Church recruited him to become medical director of the Dr. P. Phillips Hospital for Coloreds, which opened in 1959 and is currently a Guardian Care nursing home facility. He was a director of Washington Shore Savings and Loans Associates and president of the Red Cross. He was active in the mental health organization. So just wanted to give a little known Black history fact about Dr. J. Mark Cox. But also I encourage anyone, if you see this book, it's Black America Series, Orlando, Florida, written by our own Geraldine Thompson. This book was actually given to me for a Christmas gift, but I saw him in CVS and I was very excited and surprised. So if you see this, pick it up. It's some great history, again, history, Orlando history, but Black history, rural history right here in our community. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner, did you have a motion?
Yes, I move the approval of the agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Burns, second by Commissioner Sheehan. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, and so the motion carries. And I'm going to take about a 30-second break, and those who had items on the consent agenda that don't want to remain for the rest of the meeting might want to make their way out at this point. Okay, without objection, we will recess the city council meeting and we will convene the CRA meeting. First item is CRA Advisory Board meeting minutes from December 14th, 2022. Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Hill. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Number 2 is CRA meeting minutes from January 9th of this year. Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Hill. All in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, number 3, David.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. Item 3 before the CRA is an agreement with OUC. As many of you will recall over the years, the CRA has been actively enhancing our lighting in downtown, but we are looking at increasing that over this upcoming year, and starting with that, we're asking for approval to start with approximately $408,000 worth of lighting improvements. This round will focus on the area around Lake Lucerne, on Roslyn Avenue, as well as Magnolia. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Commissioner Sheehan.
Yes, Mayor, I just wanted to thank David and the CRA because, after the construction that's happened, FDOT kind of came out and left a lot of those areas, did not beautify them, left them dark. A lot of the residents were having issues and problems there because there was some crime and some concern. So I just want to thank the CRA and Walter Hawkins and everybody who's worked to try to make this area more, to beautify it, to keep it safe, to keep you from camping there, the whole shebang, because unfortunately FDOT is not always the best partner when they leave, and they left us a mess, and I just want to really thank you for all your work. It's noted and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Further discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, so the motion carries. 4, 5, and 6 have been deleted and will be heard another day. Is there any more business to come before the board, David?
That is all, Mayor.
All right, then we will stand adjourned and we will reconvene the city council meeting, and that brings us to new business. Item number 1 is the meeting minutes and approval of actions of the MPB for item number 4, Vista Lake Cell Tower, CUP 2022-10022, November 15th, 2022. This agenda item is approval of meeting minutes and the actions of the MPB from the meeting of November 15th, 2022, related solely to MPB's approval of a conditional use permit referenced as Vista Lake Cell Tower at 8734 Lee Vista Boulevard, Cup 2022-10022. The case was not appealed by any party to the MPB action, and therefore the council's consideration today is not a new hearing. However, since this is a quasi-judicial matter, the city council's consideration of MPB's recommendation must be based on the testimony and evidence that was made and considered by the MPB. All public comment must relate to the matters that are part of the record before the MPB, and no new evidence will be allowed. Let's begin with some background on the case from our planning manager, Elizabeth Dang. Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Commissioners. We'll just get the presentation pulled up here. My name's Elizabeth Dang. I'm the City Planning Division Manager, here to present to you today a project called APC Vista Lake Cell Tower. So just some ground rules for today, because this is a little bit unusual to hear a consent agenda item. Typically, the Municipal Planning Board recommendations for a conditional use permit are approved as a consent agenda item for final action by the City Council, unless appealed by an affected party. Nobody appealed this item, but in order to ensure that all parties are heard, this item was moved for new business for discussion. Because the public hearing for this quasi-judicial application was held by the MPB, the council's decision must be based on the evidence and testimony presented at that MPB hearing. So staff's presentation today will focus on the items discussed at MPB, and public commenters should also limit their comments to topics discussed at the MPB hearing. So this project is located at 8734 Lee Vista Boulevard, which is on the south side of the road between Vista Park Boulevard and Barrington Cove Point, and it's in the Vista Lakes neighborhood. The requested action is a conditional use permit to allow a 95-foot tall monopole communication tower, which will be disguised as a broadleaf pine tree on the back side of an existing retail plaza within the Vista Lakes PD. This is a follow-up request to a previous proposal on a nearby site to provide a 130-foot tall cell tower that was going to be disguised as a bell tower adjacent to a church at 8849 Passaic Parkway. The MPB recommended denial of that application, and following an appeal, the City Council upheld that denial. So this project is located, as you can see here, on Lee Vista Boulevard with the Neighborhood Activity Center land use designation and PD zoning in the Vista Lakes PD. This site plan here shows the existing retail plaza on a survey, and the areas in purple show a lease of the roof site as well as a place for the tower in the rear of the lot. So again, in comparison, the 2019 proposal showed the bell tower on the church site. This new proposal is not as tall, it's 95 feet, and it is shown as a monopole broadleaf for disguising the tower. So the applicant did do some public engagement at the Vista Lakes Clubhouse in August of 2022, as well as some less formal meetings that city staff did not attend. The public hearing was held on November 15th of last year at the Municipal Planning Board. Over 200 emails were received, largely in opposition. Most of the concerns related to adjacency to a daycare use, potential impacts on property values, and compatibility concerns. As a reminder, this topic does come up from time to time, but local governments do not regulate land use decisions based on any environmental effects of radio frequency. Those environmental effects are regulated by the federal government. So staff here finds that the proposal is consistent with the purpose and intent of the city code as well as policies of the growth management plan. The proposed communication tower will be along a major thoroughfare and as far away from existing single-family residential as possible and is compliant with the code. So staff recommends approval subject to the conditions in the staff report. On November 15th, the Planning Board also recommended approval and added one additional condition, which is that the applicant waives the right to extend the height of the cell tower. And that's something in the city code that normally a cell tower owner can ask to extend the height by a little bit to add another carrier. In this case, they've waived that right. And I'm available for any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Burns and Commissioner Gray?
Yes, Mayor, I just have a question about process, because it states that this decision by the MPB was not appealed, but now it's coming to the full council for review. And I see it says to ensure that all parties are heard. So I just want to understand the reason that it's coming to the city council when it was not appealed, and if, are we setting a precedence or anything that doesn't go, because I'm assuming that the appeals process gives the appellant the opportunity for things to be heard by the city council. So I just have a question about process and how are we here when it was not appealed?
I think Commissioner Gray at some prior meeting asked, do you have it heard at new business?
Yeah, my thought was, this is the second time around. The first one was appealed, and I think the homeowners felt like, we're going to bring it back anyway. I would have asked to move it to this new business, much like Commissioner Hill did. So I think that was the reason the homeowners did not appeal.
Okay, okay. I just want to know,
Right.
you know,
In
the
any
process,
event,
because I know
I
we
think
have
the
a
meeting
appeal
that-
process in place.
That Commissioner Gray asked for it to be, nobody anticipated that that was going to occur, so we didn't hear it on that particular day, so
Right.
that the applicant and anybody else that cared would know it would be at this meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Gray?
Yeah, I just have a question for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I remember in our community meeting, one of the objections that the neighbors had, and I believe the applicant agreed, and I'll wait to hear from council, was in the event the tower, if approved, and the tower is abandoned, they would agree to pay to have it removed. But I did not see that in the MPB minutes, nor in this. Did I overlook that?
That's correct. There's not a separate provision for that. There is a requirement already in the city code, and it can be somewhat difficult to enforce, to know from looking at the outside when a tower is in use or not in use. But I think the applicant could address that question if there's anything more stringent the council could ask for. But we do have a standard provision of code that requires that if we know for sure it's entirely abandoned.
How do we determine that?
That is a good
Loaded
question.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue, is that there's always going to be some use for that tower if you ask the owner.
Okay.
I would assume even if they didn't have any hookups on a particular day, they would anticipate something in the future, right? Okay, we do have one constituent in opposition, and then we'll hear from the attorney representing cell tower. So, Mr. Daly, is he on Zoom?
Yes, Mayor.
He is?
Yes.
Okay, then let's have him up here. Mr. Daly, you out there?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the Vista Lakes Communities Association. As you are aware, normally I like to be in person, but a work conflict prohibited me from being there today. And I would like to thank Commissioner Gray for working with us on hosting the upcoming festival that he mentioned. We're excited to do that. And I want to echo Commissioner Burns' applause for Chief Smith and OPD. They've been great in responding to issues for our community. We oppose this particular action of putting the cell tower 300 yards away and 30 foot shorter from the last proposal. As Commissioner Gray pointed out, we didn't see any benefit of going through a quasi-judicial hearing again, because it's the same issues and the same decision point that you had about a year ago, where you rightfully disapproved the tower based on the fact that it was not compatible with our community. That has not changed with the new design. As you saw from the report from Elizabeth, that there are over 200 emails sent to the MPB, over 95% of those opposed this project. In addition, 50 community leaders have sent emails to Mr. Mayor, yourself, and also the city commissioners, highlighting their disapproval of this particular, recommending disapproval of this project. And those 50 community leaders are not just from District 1, they represent every constituency in each of the commissioners' districts. From our view, there have been more than a half a dozen major property owners in Vista Lakes that have denied requests to build cell towers on their property because they know the impact it's going to have on our community, including the preschool that's immediately adjacent to that property by about 50 feet, where 100 plus little kids and staff actually spend 8 to 12 hours a day will be spending 8 to 12 hours a day next to that cell tower. The Commissioner Gray also pointed out the one other item that came up in our community meetings beyond waiving the right of increasing the height was the commitment to have an escrow account or an insurance policy to pay for any future removal of that tower if it were abandoned. I will say that there are at least one tower in the city of Orlando that we know is abandoned and is still standing after several years of being abandoned, and we don't want that to happen in our community in the event that the cell tower is built. One of the things that was presented at the MPB was a letter from the chairman of the Commercial Property Owners Association. So that's fellow business owners like the applicants or the owner of the property who is allowing the applicant to build the cell tower, who also oppose this particular project. So it's not just the community association, it's the Commercial Property Owners Association. The CDD has disapproved requests by this cell tower to build on their property. Obviously, we have as a community association. Publix has denied it. As far as we know, the owner of the 1,500 acre lot immediately adjacent to us has denied a request. The developer does not want it built on that property either. There are 2 apartment complexes to the west of our community that are being developed that we supported who also don't want it on their property. So this isn't just about Vista Lakes Community Association. Everybody that is familiar with this project, including those in each of the districts that are community leaders, recognize that this is not a good spot for this cell tower. The last thing I'll offer is that during our community meetings, with the staff included, it was discussed that the cell towers would be an infrastructure issue. And from what I understand, any infrastructure projects require some type of strategy for the city. There is not a strategy for communications within the city of Orlando that has been shared with us despite our multiple requests. Lastly, as a federal executive throughout my career, I have drafted, I've reviewed, and I've submitted for approval and signature by the President multiple regulations and laws that have been placed into effect. And I'll tell you, I don't share the sentiment of the APC Council that, and your council actually created arguments that indicated you, the City Council, have the authority to disapprove this based on compatibility issues not being compatible with the community. So you'll hear otherwise, I'm sure, from the legal counsel, from APC, that's fine. But from my experience as a federal executive working through these processes and helping draft regulations such as this, their interpretation is a clear overreach of the authority of the federal government in this regard. So again, we oppose the building of this tower at this site. We do support the conditions that would be placed on it if it were built, but our recommendation from our community as well as other community leaders throughout Orlando is not to build this tower on this site. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for hearing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So one of the things that I think the city's noted for is that when you do business with a city, you can get a consistent outcome, that we play by our rules, and this particular application is consistent in every way with the purpose and intent of our code, as Elizabeth pointed out, and the policies of our GMP, but I think council can further explain that. So, Matinee Jan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Matinee John. As a point of order, I would request, particularly if questions come up, that I be given an additional amount of time equal to the amount of time that Mr. Daly went over. As you heard from your expert staff, this application, which is an effort to settle ongoing litigation, comes before you in full compliance with every aspect of your code. Residential separation, setbacks, tower design, lighting, it will be completely dark at night. The tree type camouflage was selected, and this is relatively new in your city for a long time, as an effort to leverage the contextual cues of the cypress heads and other trees that are in the area, since there is extensive urban canopy, particularly canopy between the tower and the residential portions of the PUD. I think it's also important to keep in mind that this is in the commercial portion of the PUD. If this record were to have been opened up, I would be ready to present measured signal data on T-Mobile's connections in the area showing poor connections. And if this were to continue to another stage beyond this dais, I would be prepared to present that as well. I also have Mr. Gallagher here with APC. If you are wishing to hear from that, again, the record is not open at this time, but he would confirm under sworn testimony that Verizon has also applied to co-locate on this tower and has already submitted their loadout and commissioned engineered drawings, so that way they can understand how that will be installed on this facility. Let's see. As far as abandonment, your code has a pretty strong abandonment procedure. Most codes do have an abandonment provision. It's just most jurisdictions do not it's not a focus of their code enforcement. And there are ways to tell if a tower is abandoned. Mostly the antennas are missing up top or the cables are cut below. What I did offer was an irrevocable license to the city, so that way the city can enter at any time once it's adjudicated abandoned and remove the tower through code enforcement process. Your code does bring that liability back to the landowner and to the tower company. Let's see. So I have Jason Pauly with T-Mobile if you have questions for T-Mobile's need. I have David Talby, who testified before the MPB, if you have any questions about property value. I have Michael Gallagher with APC if you have questions about Verizon's
I think this is
co-location.
probably a pretty good spot just to see if anybody has any questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gray, you have anything? Okay, anybody have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Burns to accept the staff recommendation of approval of CUP 2022-1022, subject to the conditions in the staff report. Discussion, Commissioner Gray?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the time. I want to share with my peers some of the reasons I oppose it, and I think all my neighbors oppose it too. And it really boils down to two things for me. One is compatibility, and the other is, quite frankly, lack of demand. And let's talk about that first. You would think if T-Mobile, who's been looking to do this for 4 years, you would think during that span of time, at least one person would have called me, emailed me, done something to say, I have bad reception in Vista Lakes. I've not received one. You would think if there was a lot of support for this, we would see some of these people here saying, look, I have bad cell service. I need this. That is just peculiar to me. Where is the demand? This is the first time I've heard of Verizon and AT&T jumping on. Good. But I just think, here's what I think has happened. This speaks to the compatibility. Vista Lakes has been built 20 plus years ago, plus or minus. AT&T hasn't come to us before. Verizon hasn't come to us before. 4 years ago, plus or minus, T-Mobile showed up. It just feels to me like they missed the boat. When Vista Park was developing, for whatever reason, they didn't try to secure their connectivity. Don't know why, that's their decision. And now they're coming back some 15 years later after the development's built and saying, look, we need to put up a cell tower right in the middle of a developed community. I don't think that's fair to our neighbors. And quite frankly, the other part is the neighbors have said loud and clear, we're not opposed to you doing, if you want 5G, doing the normal, the receptors on the light poles, like we've done in other parts of Lake Nona. I think the reason there is that's more expensive, and for whatever reason, this applicant doesn't want to spend the money. We've done that in a lot of other parts of Lake Nona. No cell towers, but we've done them on light poles in the smaller cells, but it takes more money. So to me, that lack of demand, haven't heard from anybody that has interrupted cell service, and B, the fact that you're waiting until the neighborhood is developed before you want to come in and build a cell tower. Remember, the first time around, they needed 130 feet. No negotiation, they couldn't move. Well, surprise, surprise, now they can handle 95 feet. Again, I just feel like they've missed the boat, they're trying to make up for it. Shouldn't be the problem of the Vista Lakes neighbors. That's something that T-Mobile missed the boat, and that's their fault, not the neighbors. So that's why I'm opposed to it. It's not the environmental, because I don't think any of us really know one way or the other whether it's good or bad. It's compatibility and lack of demand. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to vote against it. Thank you.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Just have a simple question. How many people do you all serve in that area, or the different companies serve around that area? Do you got those stats?
Vista Lakes has a population of 7,000. I can pull up a map to see connection. I have a connection concentration map that I could enter into the record if you were to open it. But do you have that number here? Okay, my apologies. I don't have the average hourly connection handy right now.
With any other companies? None of the companies?
I have obtained such data from Verizon. Again, they're in the second carrier position, so they normally don't provide that data during zoning.
So it's really hard for us to attach the need for that if we don't have the stats.
So one stat that you do have is the 911 call statistics for Orange County, Florida. And over 80% of all 911 calls come from wireless connections. That's because we've basically cut the cord on wire lines. So,
but they come through?
The ones that do. So I do have maps that it can show denial of connection and poor connection. Again, I would have to open the record to present that to you today, but I am prepared to do that.
But Counselor, with all due respect, if somebody could not get through on a 911 call, one of us here would have heard that. And I have not heard not one. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't see any data behind it or any proof that people don't have good cell service.
Well, Commissioner Gray, it's interesting that you talk about this retrofit situation, which is what we are facing. The entire wireless network up to later years has been a retrofit situation. That's why there's federal protections on things like effective prohibition. If you went through the MPB packet, you would see that the tower companies have built a circle of towers around Vista Lakes for around the perimeter trying to reach in. They just can't get to the middle. One of the things that federal law recognizes and the FCC recognizes and has opined upon is that our usage has changed over time. Back when cell phones first came out, my father used it as an alternative to pay phones. Now, we connect inside our homes, inside our vehicles. We use them for the Internet of Things and the little devices that run our economy. So it's fundamentally changed, and I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that occasionally you have to add additional infrastructure to the area. And then also on Lake Nona, there are your staff can confirm that there are existing cell towers in the area that were built as part of that system to provide the overarching architecture support. So it's not a small cell system standing by itself.
Right. And again, I'll leave it at this because I don't want to dominate this meeting, but despite all the things you say, again, I'm having trouble getting over the fact that not a single person has called me to say their 911 call or their T-Mobile service or their Verizon service or their AT&T did not work. Not one. So I don't understand the demand. I feel like you guys are putting something in there for your own benefit, but it's not in need, nor is it accretive to the neighborhood. So thank you.
Commissioner Gray, I actually don't think they'd put it in just for the heck of it. I said I don't think they would put it in just for the heck of it.
Well, probably not, but clearly they're putting it in and they're going to lease space to the other groups. It's a revenue producer. They wouldn't build it if they didn't recover revenue on the other side. I agree with that, sir.
Okay. I think they pretty much jumped through every hoop that we have created, and they've complied with all of our rules and all of our plans. So I'm supportive of doing this. So all in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, 5-2, it carries. Thank
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we will take up the second item as item F1, and that relates to some ESG rush funds that we have, and as Commissioner Hill pointed out, and as anyone that drives on Central or Paramore can clearly see, we have a number of people experiencing homelessness who are living in tents along those corridors, and it's a fairly substantial number, at least in my opinion. And we have taken some measures, one of which was the chief's team went out and cleared 100% of those tents out on Saturday morning. And he told me that by what time, Chief? Saturday night? About 8 o'clock Saturday night, the vast majority of them were back. So it speaks to us needing to do something different than we've been doing in that regard. And we were fortunate to get these ESG rush funds, and fortunate also that the Christian Service Center is willing to work with us, along with a number of other partners, to provide some short-term rental assistance and wraparound service and do the really hard work of connecting with people that will take the assistance in those tents. And I want to compliment Commissioner Hill. She pulled together a homeless services network task force on the unsheltered about a year ago. So Commissioner Hill, thank you for your leadership on this issue. And we're probably going to do this as expeditiously as we can, but it's fairly complicated having involving OPD and code enforcement and the HOPE team and the other providers that might have the bed available. But the idea would be to have outreach coordinators that are in touch with, and we already know, we know who, for the most part, the people in the tents are already, and there are children there, and that would be our first priority. But to make contact, and then the vast majority of the ESG funding would go towards the rental assistance to do rapid rehousing and to pay for that rapid rehousing. So I'm extremely supportive of getting this started, and I think we need to take some other steps as well that will be coming. But Commissioner Hill, you asked to have this pulled off, so what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. As I stated earlier, Mayor Dyer, in council, I am very supportive of this team, their efforts. As you stated, I convened them about a year or so, better ago, and they have met weekly, every Wednesday, whether it was Zoom or in person, along with code enforcement, other community partners, OPD. I think where I'm at with this, Mayor, is that I understand the complication of putting a team together, but also understand that if we only go out 4 times a month, I'm a little 2 times in April, it's not going to help us at all. This isn't suffice for me. A surge in my mindset is hitting it hard every day. Just like if OPD was doing a surge on crime, they'll go out every day until they get drug dealers off the streets. This is what I think rapid rehousing, not a trickle-down effect, because we won't see, as it was stated just by yourself, we moved them, and I was working with OPD, I was working with Corey, matter of fact, was working with them to go out there and do that this weekend and coordinate that. And I understand the complexity, but also understand that I was able, with a ragtag crew, I'm not calling our team ragtag, but I miss words, with PKZ case managers, myself, Mayor, and Joe Caesar, was able to house a family, able to place them in school, register them, and register the child up in child care with our case in 24 hours. I'm just saying that we need to be a little bit more aggressive than this timeline that has been presented to us. In the month of March, and we're gonna have what? That's March Madness. I would hate for people to come to the city of Orlando and Paramore when they're from around the nation, and that's what they see, is just the despair and hopelessness around that stadium, around that arena.
Commissioner, I don't disagree with you on that, and I think that we're all willing to get around the table and see how much more, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but if we can't be a little bit quicker on the number of people that we are able to rehouse. So
Look, I'm just looking at what I was given, Mayor. So you might can disagree with me, and liars can figures, but the figures don't lie. They're right here, sir. And this is what I'm disagreeing with, is this timetable. I want to know more about what's our 30, 60, 90-day plan, a strategic plan, what's the benchmarks. That's only right, to understand these things. And I haven't been given those answers. And that's all I'm looking for. It's the only thing that's only fair. And I've even sat with the providers. They know I'm in support of them, but I am also in support of the small business owners in Paramore and the families that reside there that say enough is enough. This is not just their problem. It's in their neighborhood. They're afraid to go outside. They can't go out for walks with their dogs or ride their bikes at night like the rest of us have the leisure to do. The business owners can't open their doors. They have to lock their doors during the day because they're afraid that somebody might run in, and people mentally are knocking on their doors, and now patrons are afraid to come to Paramore to serve them. So we're running people out of business. So this is the urgency of now. I just can't continue to say, well, this is a complicated matter. Well, it's complicated for the people that live there. It's complicated for the businesses that's there. Yes, I'm asking for a more aggressive plan. I am in support of this plan. These are the people I asked, but this is not enough. Give me a surge. Give me true placement. And this is just 20 people out of a whole year. If it's going to take you 365 days to place 20 people, that's a problem. That
So
is a problem.
Commissioner, what I intend is that we will use the last 2 weeks of February to plan and then act aggressively the entire month of March.
That's what I asked, Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Ortiz?
I'm going to agitate here. We have a great ambassador program downtown, don't we? Isn't that what we say? We have a great ambassador program. Why don't we put them to work? I mean, really work. Exactly what she's asking for. That's it.
Commissioner Burns?
Yeah, Mayor, I guess I was going to say something similar, but not necessarily that. I do believe that we have individuals who are in contact with some of these people who need to be housed. Some of the feedback that I've gotten, as you all know, the HOPE team works out of the Healthcare Center for the Homeless. And what I've heard is the issues that they're running into is they know the individuals, but just don't have anywhere to take them. And I think this funding will provide the rental assistance that's needed for them to go into the hotel. So I think that if we can utilize the current resources that are already in contact and get them deployed to move this forward, because I understand there'll be a couple of more outreach folks part of this grant, which may take some time to hire. So I wouldn't want us to wait to hire to start moving this program. I think we should, mobilize some of the current resources that we have to start getting these people off the streets and into some type of
I think you're
rental
right,
arrangements.
Commissioner Burns, having the money to actually house them is very helpful in this process. Commissioner Hill?
Yes, Mayor, and that's the other thing. We have to identify the folks who have the beds. 20, not a heavy lift. Not a heavy lift. So if we can get that 20 instead of spread it out for a whole year, I mean, that's almost what placing two
I
of them.
think everybody's heard your message, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. I just want the community to know that we are diligent. And
Okay.
that's what I really need. They need to see us out there, not every now and then. And the replication of services, as I said, there's already providers that are in the network doing that. So I know it was told to me, well, do you want me to pull them away from what they're already doing? Absolutely, for right now, because we got dead bodies on sidewalks, and I'm not going to keep going on with that, Mayor, but you can see where I'm coming from.
Commissioner Stewart?
Thank you, Mayor. I like making a decision a little bit on data. So Lisa, if I can help maybe between you and Martha, do we have demographics of the people that are on the street? Do we have their names? What's happened in terms of the
I don't know
connection
that we
between
have
homeless service
every
network?
one of them, but we have probably the majority.
I would, we almost have, almost every one of them are pretty close unless it's something new.
Okay, Eric?
Okay.
Yes, so we went out, we've been studying since Commissioner Hill helped get the task force together. I'm not sure how long it's been, a little over a year now, I think. We studied 6 communities, 4 that had best practice where they did de-encampment procedures well, and then an additional 2 that really did it badly. And so we learned from both. As part of that process, we put together a 6-step plan, and one of those steps was working with the HOPE team and some of the other outreach teams to go out and do, for lack of a better term, practice runs and survey data, specifically in the area around the Coalition for the Homeless, but not limited to that, but between Westmoreland and Division Avenue and Washington Street and Church Street. And so we gathered data we did over 120 surveys. It looks like we identified about 68 unique individuals that at the time, and this was roughly 4 or 5 months ago, that are unique individuals around the Terry Avenue area. And one of the things that we learned from the process was that one of our expectations, we look at this population of people as being highly service resistant, that they're not likely to take advantage of shelter housing if it were made available to them. But the higher level response was when we asked most people, if there was space for you in a shelter tonight, would you take it? They said yes. And the challenge is there's just not a lot of space in the shelters. But in those instances, we actually walked people directly to the shelter and worked with the coalition on those evenings. And it might have just been 2 or 3 people each evening that we were able to do it. But that's part of this outreach surge as well. So we're now layered multiple different components, working with code enforcement, OPD, and the service providers. And so that we can try to place people in shelter that night, if it's possible, and then also get more information from people that we can place in a different type of shelter. In this case, it would be hotel, that we have funding for, in this case, enough to put 20 people into hotels for up to 12 months. I don't expect that most of the people that we work with are going to be in those hotels for 12 months. So our ideal is that we would serve more people than just those 20. But based on the criteria for the grant, we kept it conservative. But our hope is that we house quite a bit more than that. Since January 1, the Christian Service Center has moved 26 people from living on the street and into housing so far this year. Our goal overall, even outside of this particular project, is 130. But yes, we do know most of the people that are out on the streets, but those numbers are growing. They're growing pretty fast. And they're growing for a couple different reasons here in the city of Orlando, which I can get into if you'd like. But we're the same people that were there 4 months ago. Some of them are the same, some of them are not. And so there are new people coming every day from different parts of the community. And it's not just limited to the Paramore area. Paramore takes the brunt of it by far, but we have pockets of encampments throughout all of Central Florida. And so the hope is that what we learn from this particular project can be applied everywhere throughout the continuum of care's 3-county zone. But our concentration right now is on Paramore because it's by far the highest concentration of adults experiencing homelessness on the street anywhere in Central Florida.
And the encampments that's in pockets are usually in woods and different things. They're
Yes, ma'am.
not in a real neighborhood.
Sometimes they are, you're right, in that most of the time outside of the Paramore area, they're not going to be on residential empty lots. That's one of the things we see unique in Paramore. But we do see them in residential empty lots in other parts of the community, like Pine Hills, Apopka area. There's some communities in Sanford and Kissimmee that we see the same thing too. And so it's not the only area, but that's the really dangerous thing about Paramore, is that the encampments change so frequently, it's hard to keep track of how many there are. And so we're talking about dozens of encampments just in the Paramore Heritage and Holden Heights area, where an encampment could be 3 tents or it could be 20 tents of people sleeping, and sometimes even more. And but it's by far the highest concentration anywhere in the 3-county area.
Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I had to say, it's not just Paramore. I mean, a lot of the areas that Commissioner Ortiz and I share along Colonial Drive, I call them the new homeless. They're people who are still basically pushing most of their belongings in a shopping cart, and they're sleeping at shopping centers. So this is, throughout the city. Mayor, something that I wanted to ask is that during COVID, and it might have been because the hotels were empty, we were able to get some hotels where we could, house people that were on the street that had COVID. Is there any way we can work with renting some hotel rooms or something like that to get the people off the street, as opposed to doing the tents, which are awful, and it's just,
That's what the money is for.
That is what the money is for?
Yeah, so this money is specifically, it's called RUSH funding, which stands for Rapid Unsheltered Survivor Housing. And it's sort of an alternative to FEMA funding. So it's really a direct result of the hurricanes this last fall. And Orlando was one of the few cities to receive that because of the high performance that they have had with other grants in similar fashion. And so this FEMA money is typically only reserved for people who are already in housing. But other people who were unsheltered were also affected. So because the task force had already been convened and we've been studying how best to end the encampments, we found this opportunity of funding that they called the HUD RUSH program to say, hey, we've got this program in place, let's see if we can enact it. It's the first real investment that we've been able to have, I think, and real sustained. It's not the only investment, but the first real substantial money. It won't be the last. It can't be the last. I mean, if it's the last time we do this, we're in a lot of trouble. But it will be the first of many different programs as we can find different resources from anywhere, whether it be state funding, municipal, county, federal funding, or private funding. We're going to find it and have to apply it, not just in Paramore, we'll have to apply it everywhere we possibly can.
And it's just not limited to the 20. You can still expand that if necessary. And something that I have to keep saying, and I will continue to say, is the affordable housing, the Sadowski Fund has been rated by the state government for many, many years, and now we at local government are being forced to deal with this on an emergency basis. But that was billions of dollars that should have been going to build affordable housing over the course of many years.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have got to hold the legislature accountable for taking that money that should have been spent on affordable housing. We're having to, I agree that we're responding in an emergency fashion, but how many billions is it now, Mayor? Is it up to $4 billion now that has been taken from the Sadowski Fund? That would have gone a long way to provide long-term affordable housing. And we have a crisis and we have an emergency now, but we have to keep talking about where that disparity came from. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner, what's funny about that, it's not funny, but the legislature's attitude now is the affordable housing crisis is local government's fault.
Right.
Because of our zoning, not that they sucked all the money out of our affordable housing programs.
So frustrating.
Commissioner Ortiz.
We have the Coalition for the Homeless, we have the Salvation Army, what else we have?
There are 3 shelters in Orange County, the Coalition, the Salvation Army, and the Orlando Union Rescue Mission. The
Okay.
Salvation Army and the Rescue Mission have 2 sites. The Salvation Army has a women and children's program and a men's program on the same property. The Rescue Mission has 2 separate campuses a couple miles apart.
So we have the Homeless Services Network that
Yes, sir.
covers the whole region, right?
Yes, sir.
How many other places do we have around the region where we can host homeless people?
There are only 4 shelters in the 3-county area. The other is the Sanford Rescue Mission in the Goldsboro neighborhood in Sanford. It's a very small shelter that has undergone some struggles as of late, but that's it. There's none in Osceola County at all.
You said something peculiar a few minutes ago where you said that we have the largest population in Paramore. I used to work Paramore. You don't used to be like that. But there's a saying that says, build it and they will come. And of course, if we have those places built right around that area, they're going to come and assemble around that area. So have we talked to any of the other municipalities around the region so they can build their own places, so they can help us out, we can spread the wealth here? Because it seems like everything comes to the city of Orlando. We're the only ones dealing with this situation.
It's not a lot of volunteers, Commissioner.
Yeah,
I understand, and I do understand that, but I believe we all have the issues, and they have to stop sending their homeless to us. I mean, it's not that we don't want to help them, but we need to share the work here, so.
I fully agree. I'll address it by advocating one thing. The area of Washington, D.C. and District of Columbia has, is that they no longer build one program or one shelter at a time. I think they have 6 districts in the same way that we do in the District of Columbia, I believe it is. They build 6 small ones, and each district gets one at the same time, and they're, so the 25.
Sound like you're onto something.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to take this to Tallahassee, and maybe from there, then force regions to have their own fair share of shelters to help with the homeless.
I don't disagree with that, and the point about affordable housing is extremely well made. I brought this book. I would highly encourage, I know I'm not allowed to give gifts to city commissioners, otherwise I would have brought you all one, but this is Dr. Craig Colburn's study from the University of Washington, basically proving scientifically that homelessness is a housing problem, and that he looked city to city across the United States and tried to determine what variables were different in Chicago and Philadelphia versus Boston and Seattle. And only one variable holds true, and that's the available affordable housing stock in any community. That is going to be the closest trend line to seeing what kind of homeless problem you're going to have. So the reason that communities like Los Angeles or San Francisco or Seattle or Boston have a higher rate of homelessness has nothing to do with weather or service provision or medical issues. It is entirely about their available affordable housing stock over the last 20 years. And since Orlando has ranked 7th from the bottom, at the bottom, and 3rd from the bottom in the last couple of years in terms of affordable housing, we're about to see a real explosion here if we don't get a handle on it.
We see that challenge because, as I've said in the past, we're victims of our own success. We've done so well in so many other areas that everybody's moving to the city of Orlando,
Right.
I mean to the region, thinking that this is the mecca, you know, so, and of course, with that comes those problems.
But it's also a homegrown problem. In every city where it's been studied, 90% or more of the people who are struggling with homelessness were housed in that city before they became homeless. So people aren't coming here to be homeless. Occasionally that happens, but in every city where it's been studied, and I've read dozens of these reports, it's a homegrown problem.
But we do have people that send their homeless to us.
If that happens, it's usually within the 3-county area, and it is happening in the 3-county area. But and it does happen in the urban core of most communities. It's not unique to Orlando that we would have more unsheltered adults in the urban downtown core. That's pretty common for most communities because people are not they're going to get harassed and more uncomfortable, frankly, in Lake Nona than they are going to be in Paramore. However, I will tell you that Lake Nona does have people who are struggling with homelessness. I'm the chairman of the board for the East Orlando Chamber of Commerce.
But they're not
But they're not the same levels, yes.
Absolutely,
Yes,
and they're
not
not
the
on
same
their
levels.
sidewalks, they're not over in Boxy Park, they're, just please don't do that comparison.
No.
Because it's an insult on what's going on in Paramore to compare Lake Nona and the homeless over there as the homeless in Paramore. And yes, they do flock to Paramore, and I understand now what my predecessor, Commissioner Lynham, was talking about, with making an overlay and making, stopping all the service providers, because there's no beds right now in the shelters, and we know that. Let's stop fooling ourselves.
Commissioner, in our side, we have them in the woods because they don't have areas.
That's fine, but they're not in public view, and they're not where children
Homelessness
walk
is an
in.
issue. It's exacerbated in Paramore. We all recognize that, Commissioner, but there is homeless in other areas as well.
Well, let's bring them outside and let's put some of those tents on Edgewater Drive.
Well, right now, we're going to focus on Paramore because that's.
Yeah, that's what,
the
yeah,
spot.
but,
Commissioner,
yeah.
that's enough.
No, it's not enough. You can't chastise me.
Commissioners.
Don't play that
You
game.
cannot chastise me.
Please don't
because
play that
we
game.
there should be no more service provisions in Paramore. Let's spread the wealth, as you stated they're doing in Washington DC, and put it in other districts. I totally agree, because right now, in my district and in Paramore, children can't walk down the sidewalk without seeing a dead body, without seeing rapists pulling them inside the tents possibly, without drug dealing going on and prostitution. And I'm the one getting the phone calls, not you guys. I'm the one getting harassed at the gas stations, at church, and being embarrassed and what's going on in Paramore. And it does seem like some unbiased racism to a degree, because you got a strong African-American, while we're talking about black history, since Commissioner Stewart want to go there, and you're going to force me to go there, that this is happening in a rich African-American neighborhood. And this city has done a hell of a job with creating, I think we lead Central Florida with creating affordable housing, with creating service providers.
We actually lead the state, Commissioner.
Yeah. So
We
that's,
need some other folks to.
we need some other
operate
help
that.
and other people to do it. So I don't think that's a problem when it came to saying lack of affordable housing.
All
The
right,
city
let's bring
does
this
it.
in for landing. We're focused today.
Bring it for a landing.
On the tents
Well,
and homeless people living in the tents in Paramore.
We're landing it, we're making sure that we do a real surge rapidly.
Yes, ma'am.
And that these tents at least somewhat dissipate, and that we might have to work with OPD. I'm sorry, I got to say it, that maybe there might need to be some type of enforcement for those that continue to come back, because it's against the law in the city of Orlando for encampments on city sidewalks.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so now we might have to enforce that law in order to dissipate these tents.
And I think the best part about this project is that we're collaborating.
Okay,
with-
back to Commissioner Ortiz.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to suggest, some of this too has historically, if you study criminology, you study sociology, this kind of things happen close to where you have the services, the city services. So that's why it's so close to downtown. So that's why, one of the reasons why it's in your area, ma'am, Paramore Commissioner. We all have homeless. The only thing is, some of those choose to live in the woods, and it's a different kind of dynamics. But what I was trying to convey here is the fact that we have to form a committee. Maybe, Mayor, I don't know if this is something that you want to lead, or something that I'm on with other mayors and other participants from other cities, to see if we can work with this comprehensively among all of us, because it seems like the whole issues coming down to the city of Orlando, and I think they need help, and we all need help. And I think, sending their homeless to us is not the answer. We should all be involved in rehabilitating these human beings and creating a better society as a whole. So that's it. Those are my last words.
Okay, we've had a lot of good discussion. All in favor of the motion indicate.
Mayor.
Do we have a motion?
We don't have a
We
motion.
don't have
I
a
move
motion.
approval of,
Motion by Commissioner Burns, second by Commissioner Hill. All in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Okay. Let's move on to ordinances. Okay, Madam Clerk, you are up. Ordinances, hearings, ordinances, first reading. Number 1.
Ordinance number 2023-1, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida relating to signs, amending Chapter 61, Part 2 of the Land Development Code entitled Streets and Rights-of-Way, amending Chapter 64 of the Land Development Code entitled Signs, amending Chapter 65, Part 2 of the Land Development Code entitled Zoning Applications and Procedures, amending Chapter 66 of the Land Development Code entitled Definitions, providing legislative findings and for codification, correction of scrivener's error, and severability and an effective date.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Burns. Do we have any requests to speak, Madam Clerk?
We do have one request from James Carpentier.
Mr. Carpentier?
Hello, Mayor Dyer and Commissioners. I just want to speak real briefly in support of the proposed ordinance, which was just read. And I'm here on behalf of the Southern States Sign Association and International Sign Association. And first, I want to commend Elizabeth and her staff for doing a great job on really involving all the stakeholders and coming up with what I consider to be a really balanced ordinance that will be beneficial for the entire community. And so therefore, I just request that you approve the ordinance, and thank you for your time and consideration. And if you have any questions or issues, I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Madam Clerk, any additional testimony?
No other speakers, Mayor.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, hearings, ordinances, second read, number 1.
Ordinance number 2022-62, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, amending the city's growth management plan to change the future land use map designation for certain land generally located west of Cathy Street, north of Gardens Ridge Way, and east of Interstate 4, comprised of 10.86 acres of land, more or less, from Commercial Activity Center to Urban Activity Center, amending the growth management plan, future land use element, sub-area policy S.24.7 to allow UR-AC within the policy boundary, changing the property's zoning designation from Community Activity Center to Urban Activity Center, providing for amendment of the city's official future land use and zoning maps, providing for severability, correction, scrivener's error, permit disclaimer, and an effective date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Hill. Any testimony?
No speakers, Mayor.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, number 2.
Ordinance number 2023-5, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, amending the land development regulations for the Thornton Place Townhomes Plan Development, generally located south of East Washington Street, north of East Central Boulevard, east of Hill Avenue, and west of North Higher Avenue, and to change the development use for Lot 8, which is comprised of approximately 0.1 acres, providing for amendment of the city's official zoning maps, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's error, permit disclaimer, and an effective date.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Hill. Madam Clerk,
No speakers, Mayor.
discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Ordinances, first read.
Ordinance number 2023-5, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, rezoning certain land generally located east of Narcoossee Road and north of McCoy Road and comprised of approximately 9.04 acres of land from planned development in part and planned development with the aircraft noise overlay district in part to planned development in part and planned development with the aircraft noise overlay district in part, providing a framework plan and special land development regulations of the planned development district, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's error, permit disclaimer, and an effective date.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gray, second by Commissioner Ortiz. Madam
No
Clerk?
speakers, Mayor.
No speakers. Discussion, hearing none. All in favor of the bill should indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. All right, Ed, could you get us ready for general appearance?